Welcome back to Collectability. Today we are going to do something very special. We're going to discuss this incredible carriage timepiece in front of me. And this particular clock has a story that is unforgettable. It's arguably more important than any Patek Philippe that we've ever sold, yet it is not a Patek Philippe. Why, you might ask? Because it was made by one of the founders of Patek Philippe. And that gentleman was François Czapek. So let's talk about the man first, and then we'll talk about the clock. Born in the Kingdom of Bohemia, now the Czech Republic, Czapek immigrated to Poland at a very young age and retained both his Polish and his Czech citizenship. Czapek fled to Switzerland in 1832 after the collapse of the Polish uprising, and that is when he met his friend Antoine Norbert de Patek. Now, Czapek was a very talented watchmaker, and he first founded this company in Switzerland called Czapek and Moreau. It was a success, a limited success, but he knew he needed to do something different and something a bit bigger. And that's when he called his friend Antoine Norbert de Patek, and the two came up with an agreement to start a company, which was called Patek, Czapek and Company. And this is the founding of the company that's near and dear to our heart. And during these first few years of the company of Patek Philippe, amazing things happened. And keep in mind, this is before Philippe. This is a bit earlier. So this is how it was run. Czapek was in charge of the shop, and Patek was the road warrior, essentially in charge of the branding and the business. And these two were able to start this company founded in 1839 and really get things up and running quite quickly. They had 6 watchmakers at the time, and they were able to make and sell 200 watches per year. But unfortunately, Camelot ended and the partnership was dissolved as early as 1845. In fact, at the end of April of 1845. And on May 1st, 1845, Czapek started his new company, which was Czapek and Company, was what it was called. Now, Czapek was the author of the first book of watchmaking ever published in the Polish language. It was called Remarks on the Watchmaking for the Use of Watchmakers and the Public. It was an immediate success and really put him on the map. And this work was printed in 1850 in Leipzig. Afterwards, this is where things get really interesting. Patek Philippe was able to go on and grow, and the rest is history with Patek and eventually his partner, Adrien Philippe, his new partner. And Czapek concurrently was founded in 1845 with a new partner who is named Julius Gruzewski. Now, Gruzewski and Czapek had some great friends. They were really well connected to French royalty, namely Napoleon III. Now, Czapek was able to grow his beginning business, and it was able to have the factory in Geneva. He had a shop in Warsaw and another shop in Paris, and this young company kept growing quite quickly. So he and his partner were able to establish these royal connections and sell amazing pieces to the French court, and especially Napoleon III, where all of their best pieces went. Now, sadly, in 1871, Czapek mysteriously disappeared. No one knows where he's buried, no one knows when he died, and history stops in the term Czapek at that point. Now, that is until the year 2012. The brand was resurrected, and we all know the modern story of Czapek, and it's quite exciting. But we are now focused in the 19th century story. So now let's talk about the clock. This carriage clock before me is clock number 5422, and it's from 1860. And there's an important point about the history of this clock. When you look at the dial, you'll see that it's signed Geneva and Paris. And based on the number system, we know that this is one of the first clocks that Czapek sold from his new boutique in Paris. Now, he was located at 23 Place Vendôme. This was where the Czapek shop was. And for those Cartier fans out there, you might know the address 23 Place Vendôme because today, this is the location of the Cartier boutique in Paris. It's fun to think that this clock was originally sold at that location in Paris. So the complications that this clock has is quite extraordinary. It has a grand and petite sonnerie. And you could see the setting on the bottom of the clock right here. where you could actually change it from grand sonnerie to silence all the way down to petite sonnerie by just moving this. So if you wanted it quiet at night, you just move it to silence and it's not going to make any sound. If you want to hear the grand sonnerie, that is the best way, because every quarter hour, it's going to tell you the hours and it's going to tell you the quarters just by leaving it on your mantle. And if you just want to know the passing of the quarters, you just go all the way down here to petite sonnerie, and I'll just tell you the passing of the quarters. I'm going to put it on grand sonnerie now because the sound, which I'll share with you shortly, is truly is grand. Now, a little bit about carriage clocks. These were very popular in the 18th and the 19th century. These were tools, but they were also symbols of wealth. And to own one of this quality really showed status. And we don't know if this was made for the royal family in 1860, but we can be quite sure that it's a name that's known to history when you would know who their clientele was at that time. And sadly, they don't have the archives that we can look at with Patek Philippe, for example. So we don't know who bought this watch originally, but it will be someone of historical note. So they were signs of wealth, and they were also functional, useful objects. And they're also portable. In a way, they were kind of like a smartwatch of the time. You could take this clock with you if you went on a trip, or you could put it on the mantle of your home or on a desk. And it is something that you would have showed your friends and explained to them, as I'm about to explain to you, the wondrous technology that's inside of it. So the first thing that's really useful about this is you need to know what time it is. You could just push the button up top. So you take this and you press it right here. And it tells you what time it is, which is such a useful complication. But as the hours pass, and I'm going to use advance the hand so you can actually hear what happens when the quarters pass. It's such a beautiful, angelic tone. And each quarter, it will tell you what time it is. People love to look at the platform lever escapement ticking at the top of the clock through the glass panel. And in a way, these were almost skeletonized. You could imagine how, like with a skeletonized watch, it's fun to show your friends what's under the crystal. With this, you could actually look through the glass panels. You could see the winding drums, and you could see the gongs and the bells that are striking. And let's actually do that now so you can see what happens when this strikes. Absolutely stunning. Carriage clocks are quite fun to collect, and they can be bought quite reasonably. However, having a carriage clock of this quality is totally next level, as they say. When you have a clock that was made by a watchmaker, you're going to see a level of finish that you wouldn't see from a typical clock. And this clock has some signatures of Czapek on it that are, I mean that, quite literally. First thing I'd like to comment is when you take the dial off, we had our watchmaker remove the dial. There's a signature on the back of this porcelain enamel dial with Czapek's signature. Literally, he wrote his name on the clock. It's autographed, if you could say, which is right in line with other Czapek clocks and watches that we know from the era. He often signed them on the back of the dial. Now, to have something with the signature of the founding father of Patek is quite incredible to have today in front of us. Now, that's not where the signatures stop, because every single bit of this was personally finished by him, and that's what makes this so extraordinary. One thing that's fun is seeing the number 5422 on every part of this clock. When you disassemble it, you see the 5422, which is the movement number of the clock, on a multitude of parts within. And to see also on the key, to have the original key is quite fun, is amazing added value. Now, there are other known clocks from this period, signed Czapek, and they have the same style key, with this hole in the middle in this very unique shape. So this is a signature of Czapek's work, and we're really happy to have the original key to go with this clock. In conclusion, this is a piece of Patek history that truly belongs in a special collection. It is a clock made and sold by one of the founding fathers of Patek. We may never know what happened to Czapek in the end. There's no record of his death, as I discussed earlier. And we do know that he mysteriously disappeared a decade after this clock was made and sold by him. Perhaps he's a time traveler for the sci-fi set out there, but more likely we could just base it on the facts that this clock is the true time traveler. It's presented today in the same condition as one would have seen it in 1860. Imagine that we're listening now to the exact same sound that one of the founders of Patek touched and heard over 165 years ago. Now that is time traveling in the purest form. Collectability is honored to present this clock to you, and it is now available for purchase on our site. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to Collectability on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And please remember to enjoy the hunt.